All right, so the progressive era, the primary issue of the progressive era is labor, is issues of labor, labor unions fighting for wages and safety and stuff. I think that the best example we have is the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Okay, so we're going to spend a lot of time on just this one example, but I want you to know that this is kind of like the worst example. This is the one that it's a really good example to illustrate all the other ones. Okay. All right. So the first things first is we need to define what a shirtwaist is. A shirtwaist is this kind of shirt. Okay. So you could say it's a popular women's blouse from the early 1900s. A shirtwaist is a popular women's blouse from the early 1900s. This popular blouse here, right, is very, very popular. What I want you to do is give me the definition and then draw it. Draw it into your
Oh, that's
notes.
hard.
I know, but you can do it. I have faith in you, Sam. Just draw it into your notes. And what the key here is it comes in on the waist, right? It tapers in on the waist, so it accentuates her chest, it accentuates her waist, it accentuates the curvy figure of the woman, right? But here's the innovation. This is what really, really matters. You can tuck it in. That's the innovative shirt. You can actually tuck it in. Now, Emma and Fernanda, you guys may not know this, but oftentimes women's clothing is not very practical, right? Oftentimes women's clothing is not very practical, right? Emma, you look a little surprised. It's important that you understand this. It's oftentimes a complaint that women have, that their clothes aren't very practical, right? When you get older, you'll hear this, that women are going to complain about, not having pockets, not being able to put their cell phone, and you know what I mean? Anyway, so this is a big innovation in women's clothes, that she can tuck her shirt in, right? She's like wearing a skirt and tucks the shirt into the skirt, and it makes it easier for her to work. It makes it easier for her to do all sorts of stuff. It's innovative. It looks nice, it looks pretty, and it's practical, right? Something that very few women's clothing actually does, right? Most women's clothing is either practical and looks like crap, or pretty but not very practical. All right, these shirtwaists are incredibly popular, and they're being made in New York City is primarily where they're being made. Okay, up and down the island, there's factories that these things are being made in, and most of the factories are being worked by women. Okay, it's almost all women working in the factory. Men are in charge, but women are working in the factory. In this kind of factory setting, women are oftentimes the ones working in clothing and stuff. Okay, so our story is going to start with a girl named Clara Lemlich. Clara Lemlich. She's an immigrant. She's a Polish Jew. She's an immigrant, and she works at the company called Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. Triangle, like the shape. Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. It's the name of the company. Now, Triangle is a particularly bad company. It pays them extra bad. It pays them extra low. It treats them poorly. The women at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory are only making about $1.50 a week, and the average man in New York is making about $10 a week. Right, so the average for men is about $10, and the Triangle Shirtwaist women are making about $1.50. Now, this is really low, right? The standard is for women to make 50% of a man, right? So be $5. So even compared to that, the women in Triangle are only making like 20% of what a man is making. So it's extra bad. And the owners of Triangle are just not nice. They just aren't nice at all. They treat the women poorly. They treat them poorly. They're just bad. Okay. So Clara wants to join a union. Okay, she tries to join unions, but the men's unions won't let her in. A lot of the men's unions say that women are just too crazy. They're too emotional. They're too crazy. We can't let them into the union, right? Again, Emma, you seem really surprised by this, but imagine having a strike where everyone's out in the street with the signs, and then a woman gets her period. She goes, "Oh, my period!" And she drops the sign, and then the whole strike is over. Right? I mean, it's chaos. Chaos, Emma. It's chaos because that's how periods work. You know, right? Um, I'm playing with you. I'm joking. Fernanda, I don't actually think that's how it works. Fernanda looks really scared. She's like, "Oh my God." I'm playing with you, Fernanda, okay? I'm just messing around. Anyway, so the men's unions don't want women to join because of, sexism. And so Clara does what any other young, motivated, smart individual does. She founds her own union. She says, well, you won't have me, I'll found my own. So she founds the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. As it turns out, so she founds the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. As it turns out, women all over New York want to be in a union too, right? May shock you, but women apparently have the ability to make unions just like men do, apparently. Yeah. And so she starts getting women all over New York to join this union, and they start going on strike. She's actually leading a major, major strike. She's leading a strike of like 20,000 workers, right? Because as it turns out, there's a ton of women working, and they're all like kind of being abused, and they're all like being treated like crap, and they're all unhappy about it. So the companies fight back for a while. Normally what the companies would do is they would hire like mafia bosses, like criminals, to come in and like beat down people, like thugs to come beat them down. But you can't do that with women, right? You can't have a bunch of thugs come beat up women because your company will look really bad. So what they do is they have the mafia thugs bring in teams of prostitutes, and the prostitutes beat up the women. Yeah, equality. Yes. Yeah. Emma, you seem bothered. You doing okay?
I'm good.
Yeah. Get ready, because this story is combining our women's rights issues, our labor issues. There's a lot of issues going on with this story. Okay. Eventually, the protest works, and they actually get their wages raised to about $3 an hour, or $3 a week. They get their wages raised. They're still not enough. They're still getting paid low, but they're getting paid, twice as much as they were. So that's good. Nicely done. Good job, Clara Lemlich. Oh, did I forget to mention? Clara Lemlich is 14. 14. Pretty cool, huh? Right? What were you doing when you were 14? I bet you weren't organizing 20,000 women into a citywide protest, right? I know that when I was 14, I spent most of my time picking my nose and the rest of my time wondering why girls didn't like me. Probably had to do with the nose picking, right? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, she's a pretty extraordinary person, right? So let's jump ahead a couple of years. We're going to jump ahead to 1 year. We're going to jump ahead a year. Not even a year, like it's like 5 months. Okay, let's go to S, big number S. The Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. Now, Clara or Lemlich quits. She's running the union now. She doesn't want to work in a factory anymore. But this is where she used to work. This is where the women used to work. Okay, and she used to work here. A lot of her friends still work here. Now, it's March 1911. The bosses have given the women a raise, but the bosses are not happy about it. Things are not going well in the Triangle factory. Now, the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory occupies a building in New York, and it's on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors. The numbers are really important here. It's on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of this building. Saturday afternoon, the elevator worker, picture yourself with the elevator worker, you're downstairs. This is one of these old-timey elevators where the guy has to operate the button for it, The elevator isn't like an elevator you guys know today. There's no roof on the elevator. It's just like an iron cage. So you can like see the cables and stuff like taking you up. The elevator worker's down in the lobby and he's talking to his buddy. He's complaining to his buddy that he doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to work on a Saturday, but stupid triangle makes him work on a Saturday. About quarter to five, he hears the bell ringing, and his friend's like, "Hey, don't you need to go upstairs?" And he looks and he says, "Yeah, the girls are ready. The girls are ready to go. They're letting him out a little bit early, about 10 minutes early." And the guy's like, "Don't you need to take the elevator up?" And he says, "Nah, it's fine. You know how girls are. The first one always hits the bell, and then I go up there, and then they make me wait while they're all gathering their purses and their jackets and all this stuff." He's like, "I'm sick and tired of it. Every day they do the same thing. I'm just going to wait until they get all lined up, and then I'll go up." And then the guy's like, "Yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense. You know, girls, you get it, right?" And then the bell rings again. And he's like, "Man, they're really pushy today. What the hell?" And then it rings again. And then it rings again. And he's like, "Wait, something must be wrong." He opens up the elevator and he looks up the shaft and he can smell smoke. He can smell smoke. Something's wrong. So he immediately starts taking the elevator up to go help them. What we know is about 3 minutes before the elevator goes up, a fire broke out on the 8th floor. Fire breaks out on the 8th floor. Now, we're not 100% sure what happened with the fire, but what we do know is that it was pretty normal at the end of the day. The women all had to like get searched before they left because the company wanted to make sure they weren't trying to smuggle out, fabric and stuff to sew their own shirts at home. And so the women would all have to get searched before they leave. And so the men would oftentimes, some of the men were doing the searches, and the rest of the men would just kind of hang out in the back and just smoke and wait for the women to all finish getting searched, right? And as they would smoke, what we think happened is that one of their cigarettes lit the fabric on fire. The ash from the cigarette fell down and lit the fabric. There's piles and piles of fabric all over the place. Stacks and stacks of it, right? That some of it's uncut, some of it's been cut, some of it's been sewn, some of it's like halfway done, right? There's fabric all over the place. We also know that there's fabric kind of floating through the air, right? Like particles, dust, like fabric dust, like thread particles and stuff. Because you have like hundreds of sewing machines running all the time, right? So they're kind of producing this kind of dust in the air. Well, some cigarette ash lights some of the dust, which lights some of the fabric, which then bursts into flames. And when the heat of the flames starts to change the air pressure, loose fabric starts flying through the air because the air pressure starts changing. And the fabric lights on fire and it starts to spread across the room even faster. Some of it goes out the window and then it gets sucked into the window on the 10th floor. The fire consumes the entire floor in about 3 minutes. In about 3 to 5 minutes, fire has crossed the entire floor. Now, a woman is a receptionist, Rose. She's a receptionist. She's over by the elevator, and she has like a desk by the front elevator. She calls on the telephone really quick, and she calls up to the 10th floor, and she says, "We got a fire! We have a fire! We have a fire! Get out of the building! We have a fire!" And then she panics, and she leaves the phone laying on the desk because the fire's coming, and so she leaves. The problem is that when phones were invented at this time period, one phone off the hook means that all of the phones in the building can't be used. You have to close the circuit in order to call again. So nobody tells the 9th floor. The elevator starts evacuating people, right? The elevator can hold about 10 people, and he starts evacuating about 20 people at a time going down, okay? There's 2 stairways. There's one on the West Side Street, and then there's one on the Green Street. The West Side they can't really get to because the fire breaks out right next to that stairway. The Green Street stairway is closed to women. It's only for men. So some of the men, the managers, open up the Green Street and start getting the women down, right? The women start to evacuate down the Green Street stairway. But normally they kept it closed. They kept it locked so the women don't try to use the stairway. Some of the women make it down there, right? A lot of the people on the 8th floor do get out, but nobody warns the 9th floor. The 9th floor doesn't know about it until the flames start coming up through their floorboards. It starts coming up through like the heater vents and stuff. The flames start coming up through the heater vents, and by that time the 9th floor is in panicking mode. The 10th floor lights on fire first, right? 8th lights on fire first. The stuff flew out of the window and got into the 10th floor and lit the 10th floor on fire. But the 10th can't evacuate because the 9th is on fire now, right? And so the women on the 10th floor go up. They can't go down, so they go up. Now, at this point, the fire department has come. People have called the fire department is arriving, and we get the fire truck coming down here, and the fire truck, it's a horse-drawn truck, right? The horses come galloping in with the truck, and New York is one of the cutting-edge cities of the world at this time period that has this new invention called fire hydrants that they've installed around the city, right? Pretty cool invention where where it has water running through it and pressurized water, and then the fire department hooks the hose up to the hydrant, right? So New York is one of the only cities in the world who has one of these. So they hook it up. They hook it up really quickly, and the guys are hooking up the hose while the other guys are cranking on the back of the truck, right? It's a big old giant crank, and 2 guys have to work the crank, and that raises the ladder, right? The problem is the ladder only goes to the 6th floor. There isn't a ladder that exists long enough that goes to the 8th, 9th, or 10th floors. The tallest ladder that exists is the 6th floor. They turn on the hose from the fire hydrant, and the water pressure is only high enough that the water can only make it up to about the 5th floor. The water can't even reach the top. So the firefighters are trying to figure out what to do. But I think you guys know where this is going, right? The women reach to the top. The 10th floor women, they reach up to the top of the floor, and we get a bunch of the women up on there who are trying to get up there. They got trapped by the fire, but they can feel the fire. They can feel the heat starting to come up through the ceiling, right through the roof. The building next door to the building, it's not in the picture, it's on the other side. It's a building from New York University, and they were teaching classes in that building, and the people smell the fire and they see the fire. The guys in the university, they rush to the window and they see what's going on. They're like, oh my God. They go and they get a ladder from their building, and they lay the ladder from their building to the roof of the Triangle building. They lay it out across the alleyway, and they hold the ladder and they say, women, ladies, crawl across the ladder so you can get to safety. And so the women are having to, on their hands and knees, crawl on a ladder over the 10th story, the top of the 10th story of a building, in order to get to the next building. And the guys are leaning out the window, and as soon as they get close enough, they grab her and pull her in, right? The New York University guys are able to save about 30 women that way. They're able to pull them across. But the 9th floor is a problem. The 9th floor can't go up because the 10th floor is on fire, and they can't go down because the 8th floor is on fire. And now the 9th floor is on fire. On the Green Street side, on the 9th floor, there's a big giant metal door closing the stairway off. And the men on the 9th floor don't even have a key because the managers were down on the 8th floor. And only the managers have the key. We know this because later on, when they investigated the fire, they found fingernail scrapings in the metal of the door of people trying to break through the door. And we saw big parts of the door that were trying to be smashed. A man who's on the 9th floor had been trying to break through the door. He'd been trying to smash through the door, and his burned body is standing there, is next to the door. They find his burned body there. Women's hair is on fire. Their dresses are on fire. They start to go out to the ledges and they start to jump off the building because they would rather die than burn to death. They would rather die from a fall than burn to death. The elevator is continuing to go up. He gets most of the people off the 8th floor. He goes up and he starts to get some of the people off the 9th floor. But the problem is that the fire is so hot that the elevator shaft starts to bend. The metal starts to bend and the elevator can't go up anymore. It has these rails that goes, it travels on these rails, and it can't go up anymore because the shaft is actually bending with the heat. Pretty soon the elevator can't reach the 9th or 10th floor. It's stuck at the 8th, and then it can't reach this, it can only get as high as the 7th or the 6th. Women start to throw themselves down the elevator shaft, trying to get on the elevator. One of the women falls through the roof of the elevator. There is no roof, it's just a metal cage. And she falls through there and smashes all the people in the inside of the thing, injures them all, right? Other women jump into the shaft, but they fall, the elevator is above them, and so they just fall down the shaft and die in the shaft. Women start throwing themselves off the ledges. We have one guy on the ledge, on the 9th floor ledge, and he's helping the women out. The women are on fire and screaming, and he grabs them, and he throws them off the ledge. The firefighters try to catch the women standing on the 6th ladder, but the problem is that the ladder is so fragile that the weight of a body hitting the ladder will snap the whole thing. And so the firefighters have to lower the ladder down because it's not safe. Women try to escape on the fire escape on the outside of the building. You guys have seen those before, like in movies, right? Where it has like the ladder and the platform, the ladder platform. The problem is that the fire escape can only hold about 300 pounds. And there's like 15 women on it. And as soon as they all get on the fire escape starts to bend, and then the bolts snap and the fire escape detaches from the building. And it starts to detach from the building, and women start falling off of that too. The other problem is that the fire escape doesn't go all the way down to the ground. It stops on the 2nd floor. They never constructed it all the way to the ground because they were worried about teenagers climbing up it. And so they never constructed the bottom part. So women get there and then they have to drop 15 feet to the ground. The one guy helps 3 women, throws them off. The last woman he helps is his girlfriend. He gives her a kiss, pushes her off, and then jumps off with her. 65 people jump to their death. The fire department lay out a tarp. They're trying to catch people in a big tarp, but it doesn't work. The bodies are moving too fast. They come down and they hit the tarp so fast that the whole thing just hits the ground anyway. They just die anyway. Eventually they get the fire off by carrying water up the stairs. They basically have to just carry water up the stairs, tanks of water, and they have to carry it up and put the fire out. They gather all the bodies. They take them down to one of the piers, you know, where the boats dock in New York, and they convert the pier to a funeral, to a funeral site. 146 bodies are brought down. Out of the 146, I think 5 of them were men and the rest of them were women. 146. Almost all of them immigrants. Almost all of them. Many of them didn't speak English. The families come to observe the bodies. The families come to try to identify the bodies, but so many of the bodies are badly burned that they just look like a hunk of charred meat. They're trying to identify the bodies based on what their shoes look like, or if they had any jewelry or something. But one of the problems becomes that New Yorkers start to loot the bodies. People start to loot the bodies and take anything of value from them. Pretty soon all the identifying jewelry, wedding rings and stuff like that is all gone. There's one girl, a family comes up to her and they say, our daughter our family had been robbed. We live in a tenant with like 30 other immigrants. Our family had been robbed before. And so our daughter had taken our entire family's life savings and she had sewn it into the inside of her dress, between the dress and the slip of her dress. And she had sewn the money into her dress. She had $1,500. The entire family's life savings from 6 years they were trying to save up to buy a house. And she was wearing it in her dress. She threw herself off the ledge knowing that she couldn't let her dress light on fire. So she killed herself to save her family's money, but somebody knew about her dress and somebody stole her dress from her, stripped it right off her body. There's one man who is able to identify the charred remains of his wife based on the teeth, her fillings in her teeth. And what he finds out is that right next to his wife's body is the body of his daughter, also burned up, that his wife had been trying to protect her daughter. She had been trying to shield her daughter from the fire. He also finds his other daughter. His wife and 2 daughters all worked in the same factory. All of them burned. New York holds a funeral that goes up and down the streets of New York City, up and down all the streets. And this becomes a major, major issue. What I want you to do, we can take off your mics real quick, your microphones, unmute yourselves. In your notes, I would like you to, put ways that they could have prevented the tragedy. Okay, and we're going to go around. All 3 of you guys are going to give me some ways that they could have prevented this tragedy, because I think you can predict what's going to happen here. Okay, New York uses this as a changing point where New York starts to change a lot of things. All right, so let's start us off. Fernando, why don't you start us off? What's something that they could have done to prevent this?
Well, they could have had all the staircase for like men and women. So, and they would have been unlocked.
Okay, so number 1, stairs are open for everybody and unlocked. Good. Emma, give me another one.
They could make it so cigarettes have to be outside, like you can't smoke indoors.
Okay, no smoking indoors, especially next to piles of flammable fabric. Yeah, no smoking indoors. Generally speaking, no smoking is better anyway. Yeah, Sam.
Complete fire exits.
Okay, fire exits that actually could hold people. Right, fire exits that can actually hold more than 3 people. All right, give me another one. Somebody, Fernanda.
A taller ladder.
Okay, the fire department needs taller ladders and what else? What else does the
Better
fire
water
department?
pressure.
Better water pressure. Okay, what else?
Not have closed circuit phones.
Yes.
Okay, that's the technology of the day, so they didn't really have a choice about that, right? The phone, that's just how phones were at the time. So we're not going to hold that against them. They had no choice. They had no control over that. But they could have had a fire alarm. How about a fire alarm? Okay, what else, Emma?
I know, like with the door situation where like people were clawing out the doors, maybe make it so everybody has access to a key on every floor.
Yeah, or just keep the doors open.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the doors, yeah. Okay, we have to stop here. I'm gonna stop the recording. But next class period, we're gonna do the trial afterwards. I have the witness testimony that they put the owners of Triangle on trial. Right, the city of New York is going to use this. They're going to change things like the fire department. They're going to change things like the fire, the hydrants, the water pressure. New York is going to change that, and once New York changes it, it starts to change across the country, right? But New York also says, you Triangle Company, you were guilty too. Right? And so they put them on trial. So we're going to look at the trial next class period, and then we're going to look at the reforms that happen afterwards, okay? All right, my seniors are all waiting in the waiting room, so I'm gonna stop on the record real quick.
I think you're still recording.
I am.